which includes 2 first years. Arthur Lewin will play the role of the king in this match. If he's knocked out, the entire team will be disqualified. The gear they're using is specially designed by artificers to measure the amount of damage dealt. If the damage surpasses the threshold encrypted into the gear, it will release a shrill noise. Anyone who chooses to ignore this warning and continues to fight or cast spells will be immediately banned from the class, and the situation could escalate to expulsion. That said, this equipment isn't meant to protect anyone, so the students should be skilled enough to protect themselves with their mana. They shouldn't forget that they could still get injured if they charge recklessly. With that, Professor Glory signals the start of the battle. Prince Curtis immediately goes after Tessia, and without waiting for the outcome, Arthur feels confident that Curtis probably won't be able to beat Tessia, but he should be able to hold her off long enough. Then Lucas, wand in hand, marches toward Arthur. It doesn't take Arthur long to conjure up a weapon of his own. You see, my guy had been hoping that this bastard might have gotten a bit more humble since coming to Xyrus, but it seems like he's still the same piece of work. As they stand face to face, Arthur waits for his opponent to make the first move. But instead of striking, Lucas decides to take his time throwing verbal jabs. Well, it looks like Arthur has no choice now. He begins to exude an immense pressure that causes Lucas to flinch. Meanwhile, Professor Glory, observing from above, seems to be having the time of her life, almost as if she wanted Arthur to go to such extremes. Even the other contestants can't help but take notice of Arthur's overwhelming presence. Tessia, however, doesn't seem too surprised. She knew something like this was inevitable. Arthur dashes toward his opponent with unwavering confidence. Seeing him charge so fearlessly causes Lucas to freeze for a moment, but he quickly gathers himself and summons his fire element, conjuring flames to execute a technique known as Inferno's Cage. Arthur quickly deflects the fiery attack using his wind magic and lands gracefully back on his feet. It seems Lucas is already prepared for his next onslaught. This time, he conjures glowing fireballs, and he is prepared to unleash them. The fiery orbs light up and begin to surround Arthur, trapping him in their blaze. Some of the fireballs even travel towards our boy, but my guy begins dashing left and right. One of Arthur's steps accidentally triggers one of Lucas's traps, causing an explosion. Thankfully, he is safe, but Lucas is having the time of his life watching Arthur struggle and dance around his attacks. He continues to bombard our boy with those relentless fireballs. Sylvie gets concerned to see her papa struggling. Arthur reassures her that he's fine and quickly inquires about how the rest of the team is doing. Sylvie happily reports that Mama is winning against Curtis, and Claire is holding her own against Grumpy Guy. Satisfied with the update, Arthur shifts his focus back to his opponent. He observes that Lucas's mana pool has grown significantly since his adventurer days, larger than Arthur expected. Regardless, he decides to close the gap between them, so he charges straight at the smug bastard. But Lucas counters with yet another fire attack, forcing his opponent to step back again. Without fire or water elemental mana, Arthur struggles against the intense heat. He starts to worry that if this drags on, his mana pool might eventually be drained. Another explosion erupts, sending Arthur flying backward. Lucas, on the other hand, revels in his dominance. He's glad he didn't join the disciplinary committee. If he had to work alongside someone as incompetent as Arthur, he says he might have quit school out of sheer embarrassment. It looks like Arthur is struggling more than he anticipated. He wants to conjure a wind spell strong enough to counter the scorching fire, but he's not getting any space to make it happen. He focuses himself, recalling that wind magic is essentially about pushing, pulling, and manipulating air to achieve desired effects. But what if he manipulates the air particles themselves? He could get rid of the very thing fire needs to keep burning, which is oxygen in this case. Arthur isn't sure if he can manipulate the oxygen fast enough to extinguish the flames before they reach him, and even if he does, would he still be able to breathe? With all these daunting questions swirling in his mind, he cracks a smile. After all, the reason he came to this school in the first place was to face the unpredictable and learn from it. All the while, Professor Glory is genuinely surprised to see that Lucas is better than she's heard. Inferno's Cage is one of the tougher flame attribute domain spells, yet Lucas is able to use it so proficiently at such a young age. On top of that, his mana reserves seem almost on par with that of a silver core mage. This also causes her to sulk a little. Given how fast the younger generation is growing, the old-timers like her will eventually be left behind. Still, she's glad to see kids like Arthur Lewin. He lacks the variety in his spells that would be typical for a dual elemental mage, but he makes up for it with fluid movements and tight control. She was only mildly curious about the kid who managed to best a veteran adventurer, even one as careless as Geist. But after sensing that pressure he exuded, she has no doubts how he was able to conquer his senior. It makes her wonder what kind of life he's lived to be capable of something like that at his age. Suddenly she notices something unusual. From what she can see, Arthur seems to be holding his breath. After holding it, he stands still and lets the fireballs hit him. At first she's unimpressed, thinking his uniform is about to burn off if he keeps this up. But then something unexpected happens. The fire simply disperses the moment it gets closer to him. This piques her curiosity instantly. She orders her beast to lower in altitude because she wants to see this little monster up close. From what she can see, unlike wind magic, trying to manipulate the air itself involves much more insight and a higher level of concentration and channeling in order to cast properly. That's why there aren't many mages capable of just sucking the air out of their opponent's lungs. It would take hours of concentration to manipulate the air directly around a moving living target. That's why mages typically use their own body as the source or a pre-designated unmovable location. Arthur, however, is keeping his area of effect as close to his body as possible. Even then, to be able to do this in the middle of a fight is just awe-inspiring. Now let's switch to our boy's perspective. Arthur is manipulating a thin layer of air around his body to form a vacuum and disperse the fire before it hits him. It sure sounded a lot easier in his head, but at this rate, his uniform is going to hit its threshold before he can get the hang of it. Still, if he can just break through the barrier that bastard has surrounded himself with, Lucas is as good as defeated. Meanwhile, the bastard is starting to lose his cool, seeing how Arthur is able to block his spells like that. He doesn't see any wind magic being used, so he is dying to know how Arthur is defending himself. But regardless, Lucas decides to end this battle once and for all. He quickly uses another technique and conjures up a flame guardian. The fire golem charges at Arthur, but our boy isn't fazed in the slightest. In fact, he's kind of glad to see that this bastard is finally pushed to his limits and has to use his trump card. As Arthur prepares himself for the attack, he suddenly feels an overwhelming surge of mana. Sylvie quickly warns him that the mana he's feeling is a danger. Before Arthur can figure out who is exuding this copious amount of mana, the Fire Guardian sneaks up on him and hits him hard, sending him skidding across the ground. Thankfully, he manages to save himself from getting hit directly. Just as the beast charges at him, Arthur quickly uses one of his signature moves, where time seems to stop for him. But the hits he's taken already are weighing him down, and he knows he has to get out of there fast. He needs to reach Tessia because he senses she's in trouble. He realizes that the mana spike he felt earlier is coming from Curtis releasing his beast will, and the target of this is none other than Tessia. What's really bothering Arthur is that Tessia doesn't have any sort of protective barrier around her. Barely holding on, Arthur gathers himself, and before the mana beast can hit her, he jumps into the scene like a hero. He holds Tessia in his arms, ready to take the full brunt of the attack because he doesn't have enough mana left to block it. It's going to hurt, but he knows it's a sacrifice worth making. But before we see the climax, let's rewind a little and see how Tessia ended up in this tough spot. While she's going up against the prince, her mind is momentarily distracted, thinking about Arthur. Suddenly, Prince Curtis charges at her. She manages to block the direct hit, but Curtis is clearly annoyed that she wasn't even paying attention to him. The way she dodges his attacks with such fluid movements makes it look like a piece of cake. With some slick moves, she proceeds to deliver her finishing blow, but suddenly her mana core starts to throb. Though she manages to throw the prince away, her chest hurts like hell. She's not sure what's wrong with her, and she doesn't have time to figure it out. Curtis is ready with his beast greater, and it's at that moment the prince decides to unleash his beast will. Tessia quickly catches on that danger is ahead, given the amount of ambient mana they're both gathering. Tessia also uses her earth magic, summoning strong roots to fight against her opponent. But Prince Curtis just hops over those roots effortlessly, making it look like a piece of cake. Tessia, on the other hand, is still unsure of what's going on with her mana core. She's struggling to properly assimilate the energy from the Elderwood Guardian's core. She even considers forfeiting the match, but then her pride gets the better of her. As the student council president, she just can't bring herself to concede defeat. She can't let anyone think she's weak, much less a coward, so she gives it her all. Prince Curtis, meanwhile, readies himself for his final attack. With all the mana he's managed to gather, he releases a massive blast of fire with a lion's roar, sending it flying toward her. All the while, with Tessia's mana core overwhelming her, she begins to lose consciousness, and the last thing she notices is the blazing fire heading straight toward her before her eyes shut. The powerful attack from Prince Curtis causes a devastating blast that rocks the entire arena. Professor Glory is devastated when she realizes that she wasn't able to make it there faster in time to prevent the destruction. She quickly lands as soon as she approaches the explosion zone. The smoke is thick, but as it starts to dissipate, she sees nothing but burning roots. When she looks into the other side, she spots Arthur on top of Tessia, his back burned to a crisp from the blast. The other students quickly rush to the scene, and Glory immediately commands them to get the rest of the team on standby, and further instructs one of the students to start the damage assessment. A while later, Arthur finds himself in the infirmary, his entire body wrapped in bandages. Sitting on top of him is an angry Sylvie, who presses her little paw against his head to express her frustration. She's in tears, overwhelmed by the thought that he had been on the verge of death. She doesn't know what she would have done if he hadn't made it through. Arthur is startled at first but soon softens as he apologizes for worrying her. He admits that it was reckless of him, but he promises he won't ever leave her. Right then, Director Goodsky enters to check on Arthur and inquires about his well-being, but Arthur is more interested in hearing how Tessia is doing. The director claims that she is doing well, and the good news is that Tessia is in a much better state than he is. Arthur clearly understands the cause of her condition. He is sure that it is due to the beast's will that her body was not able to handle it. The old hag is startled to hear this and quickly asks how he knows. Arthur admits that he is the one who gave her the beast will. He believes he should be the one to help her with the assimilation, but he doubts if he can in his current state. Goodsky reassures him that he has already done more than enough. It is actually her fault for not paying much attention to her. Tessia is at the most vulnerable stage of the assimilation process, and the director believes that if that girl had been taught about it earlier, this might have been avoided. Though she thanks him for sacrificing himself to save her disciple, the director has already contacted both the royal family and Arthur's, so they should arrive soon. She advises him to get some rest until then. With that, the director leaves Arthur alone for some much-needed rest. Outside, Tessia stands hesitantly, unsure whether to enter. After a moment, she decides to let Arthur rest. As she stands there, the old hag startles her by inviting her for some dessert. With no choice, Tessia decides to join the director, unable to summon the courage needed to face Arthur just yet. Hospitalized, Arthur finds himself waking up to the blurry sight of his family, reminiscent of the time he was first reborn into this strange world. His mother asks if he's okay, and Arthur apologizes for making them feel unnecessarily worried. Ellie is out here with the sibling jokes, shitting on her brother despite his hospitalized state. Even Arthur calls her a damn brat for that. But their Giga-Chad father knows what's up and exposes how Ellie was even more worried for her brother than Alice. It's the first day of school and he's already like this. Arthur tells them to go and check on the other dude's condition who he scrapped with. Bro really said, "Call an ambulance but not for me." While the rest of them are laughing, Alice is horrified because, well, typical mom energy. She's worried he might have killed someone's child. Alice is out here assuming they're gonna live in a cave and hide from the rest of the world now. Tessia's family comes around to explain that Arthur's just kidding around. Both Reynolds and Alice are stumped to find the great elves in their presence. Their leader returns the compliment, stating that they should be thankful for Arthur's valiant rescue to Tessia. They're introduced to Tessia's grandfather, the former king of Elenoir, and finally the girl herself, who is really embarrassed to meet them. Both Reynolds and Alice stare at each other for a second before looking right back at Arthur. These monsters instantly know what's up and come up with a devious plan. Even Arthur is kind of worried as Alice embraces Tessia's hands in kind. She glows up hearing that Arthur mentioned her quite a lot. For a teasing little remark, Alice whispers something in Tessia's ear, causing her to get worked up like crazy. Her grandfather comes to ask about Arthur's condition, who is currently more sick, wondering what his parents are cooking up just now. Tessia's grandfather rats out their little scheme about him eventually becoming his grandson-in-law. Tessia apologizes on everyone's behalf and explains that she wanted to come alone, but remembered that she was the reason he ended up in the hospital in the first place. Our boy plays a chill guy and says he likes the audience. Meanwhile, Ellie is eyeing down the chick who her brother risked his life for to save. Clearly, she's jealous. They both come to know about each other, with Arthur adding that Tessia gave her the bow on her birthday. The elven girl is delighted that Lilia appreciated her gift. In a teaching moment, Lilia decides to question Arthur, who is the prettier of the two. In typical Sigma male fashion, this guy calls both of them ugly, making them both frustrated. More importantly, he wants to know about Tessia's mana core. Her grandfather explains that her beast core is integrating well compared to his. More importantly, he's dying to know how the kid got his hands on the Elderwood Guardian's core in the first place. Arthur nonchalantly expresses that he killed the creature, which is how he got it. Their meeting is interrupted when Tessia's assimilation is brought up for additional monitoring. Also, the kid's got an army of visitors wanting to know how he's doing. The Vincent family, Elijah, and more. It's explained that Arthur received plenty of visitors throughout the day after his family left. There were a few annoying ones who wanted to know what happened, while others were seriously concerned if he was doing okay. Then there was the bastard inventor Gideon with a poisonous potion in hand, probably trying to kill the kid. He left, recommending Arthur to drop by the training room, as Director Goodsky tasked Gideon to build training artifacts for him. The sleazy inventor dashes away, happy that he now has the boy indebted to him. Arthur finally collapses to rest